hi Robin. My name is Nicolette. I am the podcast creator for Your Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. First off, thank you very much for saying yes to be interviewed on this show. I cannot wait to interview you and um, just want to share or at least get a glimpse of your story, especially on leadership development, because the essence of my podcast talks about looking inwards, but at the same time, how can we build that inner strength and confidence as we, well, as I always like to call it, as we move around this 3D plane.
Mhm.
So, without further ado, let me just read a bit of an introduction to our listeners, and then we can dive into your life story.
Sounds good.
Right. Okay, so everybody, hi, thank you for tuning
Here,
in. We have
just move your,
Robin.
sorry, just move your microphone just a little bit to the, there you go. Okay.
Okay. We have Robin Camarote here. She is a leadership trainer and executive coach. She has 20 years of experience in leadership development, strategic planning, and workplace transformation. She loves high energy, engaging conversations and delivers programs that help her clients boost their team's engagement, confidence, and productivity while reducing friction and frustration. She also writes leadership columns for Inc.com, is a published author, and a TEDx speaker. So, welcome, Robin.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you so much. Okay, so, Robin, can you share with us what was your childhood like? I like to
Oh, my
start this.
childhood. Yeah. Well, so I am the oldest of four children.
Right.
And, one of the things I kind of got into, like, maybe in my 20s was this idea of birth order and how much that impacts our personality and how we look at the world. And for me, that was so true. I am the stereotypical big sister. I
The
am,
eldest?
I am the eldest. Yeah. So, and
Oh, same.
I, I'm so I don't know about you, but like I'm bossy. I think my ideas are the best ones. I feel like everybody else is depending on me to tell them what to do. And my siblings have put up with this now for 40 plus years that we've known each other. So yeah, but I had a really, typical here for the States in some ways, So I actually was born in Alaska. My parents were both working there. We moved around a lot when we were growing up. We lived in the state of Nevada, then Arizona, and then came to the DC area. And all of us, the kids and my parents have kind of like settled in various places here, around DC. And one of the things that in our family, we spent a lot of time together. We always had a lot of animals. We always had pets. My parents, or at least my mom specifically, thought it was always better to have two of whatever you had. So we always had two dogs and two cats, and then we eventually had chickens and all this other kind of stuff. So lots of
Chickens. Yeah.
lots and lots of activity at our house. It was always noisy, always a little messy, a little chaotic. And so that's really the kind of environment I'm most comfortable in.
Wow, sounds like you had a lovely childhood. That's
Yeah,
nice because
yeah.
I mean, I looked into I like to read, so most of the things that we feel growing up, the trauma, they always start with childhood. But I feel like the people who actually had the privilege or are blessed to have a beautiful childhood, all often they turn up okay in life. I mean, I can't speak for all, but yeah, this is just what I think. And
Yeah.
of course, we all have different circumstances that may have we develop trauma along the way, but still, I think the very big part when we go to therapy, it's always like, okay, what's your childhood like? So,
Yeah.
I, I mean, I just thought about it now. My interviews with knowing, I would like to know like how did you grow up and yeah.
Yeah.
And I was reading your profile and I saw imposter syndrome and also vulnerability. These are the two things that I stand by very much in my life. And I had an episode dedicated just on imposter syndrome. So I'd like to get right into it. Can you
Yeah.
tell us? in your journey, or have you had any episodes or moments when where you felt imposter syndrome was dawning upon you, or it's looming?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, like almost every day. It's like a
Still?
constant kind of, oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and so I'll tell you this, and I say that not to be discouraging to any listener that might be experiencing this, but it's something that, I've felt as soon as I heard the term many, many years ago, it clicked with me like, oh, that's it. That's what I'm feeling. It made so much sense to me. And which is interesting because often the people who feel imposter syndrome so acutely are actually very high performing and they're incredibly capable. But there's this disconnect between how we see ourselves and how we think other people see us. And
Perception of
there's this
others.
perception of
Yeah.
others, right? So there's this gap. And so for many years, I kind of it was there. I was kind of trying to work with it, work around it. I was trying to kind of get over it. Like if I just got enough training, or if I got enough experience, or if I got enough level or money, or that it would go away. And the
Yeah.
truth is, it's never really gone away. However, I would say that as I've gotten older, I have some more perspective on what that is, and the ability to kind of show up anyway, even if you're feeling that self doubt or questioning your abilities, but kind of doing it anyway with that feeling on board has been really useful because one of the things I've noticed is that I would feel it most acutely, for example, when I was going to get up and give a conference presentation. I would think like, who am I really to like get up?
Yeah, like why did they pick me
Why
to
would
do
they
this?
listen? Right. Why would they listen to me? Even though I had like put the abstract together, had been selected for the conference, like clearly somebody thought that they were going to get some value out of it. So even though I kind of cleared all those hurdles, I would get up to in front of the room and be like, why would they listen to me?
I think they had the wrong person.
They got the wrong, they're going to figure it out. Oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
horrible.
then I'm an imposter.
Right. They're gonna know. But one thing I noticed is that if I would get up and do it anyway, no matter how it went, if I thought it went terribly, if I thought it went great, whatever, nothing bad happened. Like there's never been that moment where people are like, aha, we knew it. Like
We caught you.
we caught you. That literally never happened. So what we imagine is so much worse than the reality. And for that reason, I really encourage people to say, to not to kind of not let that feeling stand in your way of going for those big goals and those big dreams, or believing that at some point you're not going to feel that way. That hasn't been the case for me. And if you tune into it and you kind of let it keep you small, you're really going to not live into your full potential. So yeah, so I say, yep, it's always there, still just a little bit, and I encourage people just kind of keep doing what you're going to do. Keep going for those goals, even when you feel that way.
Right. I think this, okay, so I'm gonna tie it back to another topic, which is vulnerability. I think
Yeah,
when you're authentic, this is where you can practically, if not eliminate or dissolve imposter syndrome, at least keep it at bay, right?
yeah.
But I'd like to ask, like, what are your tips on overcoming the challenges of imposter syndrome in leadership roles?
Yeah. Well, I think one is a little bit about like listening to your own self-talk. So reminding yourself that you are a person with, good ideas, that you're open-minded, that you're taking in information, and that you're learning as you go. And that's all that we all are. No one has anything more than that. And, everybody is figuring it out as they go. And so that's
Oh,
why,
that's a very good statement. Everybody is still figuring it out anyway.
yeah, everyone else is in the same boat. And that for that reason, I think the vulnerability
Mm.
is really important because it's this willingness to be a beginner. And it's, and to even own that and say, look, I am, you know, this is my first time running a meeting, or this is my first time doing a conference presentation. And people find that so relatable, and the ability to kind of connect with that, and just, um, being able to kind of state where you are in the process, and then continuing to like go on and get that experience. So I think they're very closely related. And I think your vulnerability can actually help you build connection and relationships kind of as you go through.
Right. I agree that. I agree on that. So, what are the strategies for overcoming self-doubt and building confidence? I think the last question and this question were a little bit tied together. They're intertwined, but yeah. What are these strategies in your
Yeah.
opinion?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I feel like, related to what I was saying before, I think sometimes we want to wait until we feel confident to be able to do something.
Um,
And we actually
yeah.
get confidence from doing the thing.
When doing
So
it, yeah.
we're actually like doing the thing. So, if I waited until I felt like sure that I was going to get up in front of this conference and knock it out of the park, it would literally never happen. It would have just never happened. But now that I have a couple dozen that I've, under my belt and some experience, I can feel a little bit more confident, going into the next one, that I know I'm not going to pass out or die, or no one's going to yell at me, or like nothing bad is going to happen. I now have that experience. I also know what works for me in terms of preparing. So to me, one of the keys to increasing our confidence is preparation. So if
Mm.
you can, of course, do the homework, like do the work in advance, start to anticipate the kinds of questions that you might get, knowing that you're not going to imagine every question, but we can kind of imagine the kinds of questions that we're going to get, and draft out possible answers for those, and just kind of think through the scenarios and what you would do. So do a little bit of scenario planning. Well, if somebody challenges me on this point, like what's one counter that I might say, or if we encounter this problem, what's 3 different ways that we can solve it. So doing a little preparation in advance helps so much, because then in the moment, like that panic that can set in with like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Wait a second. Like, yes, I've worked through this. I have some options. Let me just take a breath, think it through, and then try one of my next things.
Awesome. I cannot help but to think about you said something about we cannot wait until we're ready, right?
Yeah.
But Robin, I'm gonna ask you one question. What about relationship? This is nothing to do with leadership. I'm gonna take you
Yeah.
away from that for a bit. But when do you know when you're ready to take the next step in any relationship, romantic relationship?
Oh, that's a good question. And
Ooh.
I'm very curious why you're asking that.
No, I mean it's a question. It's gen. Well, okay, this backfired.
Yes.
Okay, let's just say I have a friend, a friend who because I'm in my early 30s, so of course, and I don't know if you've listened to my podcast, but the reason why I started my podcast is because I started my own healing journey after my divorce. So right, so right now I'm out there again. I'm starting to date again. So it's like I'm I'm so what I'm trying to say is I'm not saying this for myself, but also for other people that are still in that they don't know whether when is they're still waiting. Because I hear a lot of my friends that they're not ready. I'm gonna do this ABC when they're ready. But truth is, you're never ready. It's either you're getting married or having a kid, and the reason here mostly is because financially they're not ready. You know what? I just wanted to know your opinion. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I definitely would not consider myself to be like a relationship expert. I've been very happily
Of
married
course.
now for 17 years, and
Oh, lovely.
yeah, yeah. And I did feel at the time very ready and very confident about the person. And I think things have certainly kind of worked out, exceeded my expectations in terms of how marriage would be. But But that wasn't always the case. I certainly relate to previous relationships and kind of not being sure, not being on the same page with somebody in terms of how much I wanted versus they wanted and all that disconnect. So I do think with romantic relationships, it's a little bit of it's a dance. Both people have to be
Yeah.
kind of
I
in
always
it
refer
for
that
the,
as a dance. Yeah.
yeah, that you kind of have to be on the same page in terms of what you want. So I guess zooming out in any relationship, I think it's just important to know what you want and just
Mm.
tuning into kind of what you want out of that relationship, what you're willing to give, who you want to be, and being really grounded in who
Mm.
you are and what you want to bring to that relationship, and not expecting um, anyone else to kind of fill in the gaps that you're feeling in other parts of your life. So certainly if you mentioned kind of that financial insecurity. So I mean, number one thing, if you can get yourself financially secure and then pursue other people who are also financially
Financially
secure,
secure.
oh my gosh, like it's just setting both of you up for success. So yeah, so I mean, really getting clear about like what those gaps you're trying to fill them for yourself, and then find the right match.
Well, thank you for that little that
Yeah, a
side
little,
track.
little detour there.
Yeah, little detour. Thank you so much, Robin. Okay, so probably my listeners would be like, "Oh, Nicolette is doing her thing again. She's thinking out loud and she's asking a
Yeah.
question out of the topic." But yeah, right. Let's go back to the question. So right. Now we're stepping into vulnerability. What does it mean to be vulnerable in a position of power? And can you give us some examples of being vulnerable at that?
Yeah. Yeah, I love this question because I think too often we assume that in leadership positions, they you can't be vulnerable. That the expectation from people on your team are that you are solid, that you got this, that you're confident. Yes, exactly. Like that's the exact posture. So I think what it means is to be really in tune yourself with how you're feeling, clear about what you know and what you don't know, and be confident enough to be able to acknowledge that publicly. So
Mm.
not, so an example would be, recently I was coaching a client who was kind of their company was being acquired, and there was so much uncertainty I mean, because they knew kind of like the details of the transaction and kind of like about when that was going to happen, but there was so much unknown about what it was going to be like on the other side of that. And so for that particular leader, we did coach a lot on kind of owning what he did know and what he didn't, not pretending to, that everything was going to be okay, and just kind of, you know,
Sugarcoat it.
sugarcoating it all. Like, because people see through that.
Mm.
They know that they know you don't know.
Yeah.
And while they might want some reassurance, I think we can fall into the trap of reassuring people that there's going to be a certain outcome, and when instead we can reassure them that no matter what, we're going to do this together. No matter what, we're going to figure it out. And we're going to rely on our strengths in terms of, research and documenting lessons learned and process improvement. We're going to do all the things that make us who we are, so that we can come out on the other side of being, preserving our culture and still having this thriving business. So
Yeah.
I think, being very careful as a leader not to promise something that you can't deliver, while really
Mm.
owning what you know, what you don't know, and reassuring people about process versus the outcome that you can't actually, own or deliver.
Wow. Beautifully put. I mean, I thought about that before, but yeah, that was on point. So, Robin, what are the benefits of vulnerability in leadership?
The benefits, I think, are just the opportunity of a deeper relationship with your team.
Yeah,
Because that
that's true. That's
pretending,
true. Yeah.
the pretending is what gets in the way of
Mm.
us really having a deep connect, like a human connection. If I'm pretending to be somebody else, you can see through, that's not real. and you don't trust me, you don't believe what I say. So I think the benefit is that, trust goes up, confidence in your kind of abilities to work together go up. And just that there's just a deeper relationship there.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that because I we my team is very small, like where I am now. So it's like me and another two-person. It's just three of us. But then it's like I I think I was very I said it out there that I'm not so much of a technical person, but I can see the bigger picture because I used to work as a consultant. So the other person, he's actually the best in terms of very detail driven, very I would say very hands-on person. And then we just we recruited another person. She's young, but she is very bright, and she also admitted that she didn't have the knowledge, the basic knowledge, but she's got the attitude. So, safe to say, and this is just me sharing,
Yeah.
sharing with you that I think the dynamic, although I never pictured it to be like that, but I think we pretty much complemented each other because we've got one that is actually good at the detail, and then me just providing the direction and becoming the advisor, and then we have another person that's like, oh, okay, I can let me there's a lot. Maybe she's got room to polish, like we all are, but she's willing to be of service to that side, technical, and my side. So I think whatever that you said, and I always emphasize the importance of, okay, I don't know, um, uh, uh, I'm not so sure about how do we go about this. Can you tell me? But ask him to come in, and then for her, can you give me more ideas about like on the artsy side, like more on people. So yeah, I think that vulnerability and that will, like you said, deepen the relationship and also enhances the dynamic
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that.
Well, it sounds like you're totally on the right track with this team. And especially because you have a good sense of the strengths of each member, kind of what you bring, what, the more technical person brings, what this new energetic, fresh person kind of brings to it. So really being in tune with other people's strengths and how you can combine
Mm.
those into a high functioning team is really important. So well done there.
Oh, thank you. Because at first, when I took up the job, I was like, and most of it they wanted me to look into technical, and I was yeah, that's where my imposter syndrome crept in. I said, oh, I need to know this, but I don't know. But they're gonna catch on, and then they're gonna find out that I'm not good, and then I think at first they kind of knew it, but they never put pressure. They never pressured me into like, okay, Nicolette, you have to, but we know you have this strength. So, and we somehow navigated through a period of time, and I said, okay, perhaps let's interview new people to be in your teams. I had some people that left, and lucky enough, he was there. It's like, okay, I leverage on my intuition and my feeling that it's all right. I always echoed also on the was it Steve Jobs that said, you should not ever be afraid to hire someone smarter than you. Yeah. And yeah, I stuck by that notion. So fingers crossed on my team. Okay, so how do we create a culture that encourages authenticity and vulnerability?
Yeah. I think it's doing exactly what you're doing. It's leading by example. So we can never ask our teams to do anything or show up in a way that we're not willing to do ourselves. So
Mm,
if you are modeling the behavior so if the behavior you want to see is kind of really getting um, like, you know, people's, you know, true opinions and thoughts about things, and to help you see any blind spots, then you modeling that behavior and really encouraging it is important. It's also being okay when people show up with stuff you don't like. So,
Ah,
you
yeah,
know,
that's so true.
because sometimes we can be like, yes, I want a culture of inclusion and
Mm, mm.
vulnerability. And somebody's like, I think this idea really stinks. And you're like, yeah, like get back in your lane. I didn't even, you know, who asked your opinion? So we have to be really
Yeah.
careful not to shut it down when it happens. Now, that said, like people need to, you know, be appropriate and professional. But one caution I would have on authenticity, I was working with a team a couple of months ago where one person was just incredibly negative and he didn't really have like a check on that behavior. And he
Right.
felt like kind of showing up and being a jerk was his right, because he's like, I'm authentic. I'm having a bad day and I'm not going to say hello to you in the hallway. And I'm like, you're kind of just being a jerk. Like, that's not like, don't get those confused. Like, being authentic with just putting it all out there, whatever mood you happen to be in, because that spills out and infects everyone. So,
Mm,
his negativity was just spreading everywhere, where, you know, the opposite is true as well. Like when you bring up, you know, more kind of a positive outlook, that also spreads. So I would just say, while I think there's incredible value in vulnerability and being authentic, being careful in when you're building that culture, not to give
mm.
license to yourself or to other people to just kind of show up and spill whatever emotion they happen to be having at the moment, like all over everybody else. So, so it's not licensed to be a jerk.
I love that.
Yeah.
Not licensed to be a jerk. Okay. Um, right. Okay. You believe that leadership training should be offered to all employees regardless of level. Can you share to us why?
Yeah, yeah. This is something I believe so passionately about, that all employees, everybody in our organization benefits from really the basics of leadership. And it's based on this belief that like leadership is not tied to a role or a title, but it's about having a vision. It's being able to get people on board with your idea. It's being able to kind of
Mm,
map out the steps to get there. Every single role in our organization should be able to do that. And it's also about, you know, the ability to kind of connect with people and articulate your vision, you know, your ideas. So, you know, too often leadership training is reserved for a few at the top. And the
yeah.
reason is because it's expensive, it's time
Mm-hmm.
consuming, it takes people out of their, you know, out of their day job.
Operations, yeah.
Right. And so it makes it this huge barrier because of the expense and because of the time. Like organizations just simply can't afford to have more people go. So what what I encourage organizations to do, and part of the training that I offer in my coaching program, is leadership for all. And so it's how can we shrink down those essential lessons of leadership into something that's more affordable and also less time consuming, so we can get all
Bite
boats to
size.
ride. Yeah, like bite size, like an hour to 90 minutes at a time, very targeted topics. Just give people the information, give them some actionable, practical things that they can do in their job, that they can then take it to the, you know, take their work to the next level. So that's, you know, that's really kind of the concept behind, you know, why I built Leadership for All.
I'd like to, yeah, I thought about skipping some questions, but I think I want to ask you some of the questions you put on your profile because I think we're building up really good here. So how do you measure the success of a leadership development program, and what are the metrics that you use?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things that we can do with measuring the return on investment, because regardless of what path you take in leadership development, there is some cost to the organization. Even if you develop
That's
something
right.
in-house, like there's always some, you know, some kind of investment made. So it's important to understand what that return on that investment is. So the very first thing that we should do is just take a snapshot of all of our traditional business metrics at the start. So those things that you're already capturing in terms of revenue and profit and retention and all of those things that are already measured, take a snapshot at the beginning, because later we want to come back and just see, did they move? Now the challenge is that we can't necessarily draw causation with leadership development programs and like an increase in revenue, for example. So we can't like directly correlate those two, but we want to just understand how they've moved. So the second two things that we do, so there's some layers here. The second thing is to do a pre-survey with all participants. So we ask them to rate themselves before the program starts. Like, how do you rate yourself on these leadership capabilities? And then once the program's done, usually about 3 months after, we do the survey again to kind of gauge, do they feel like their leadership skills have changed? So it's a self-assessment. We just look at the, look at the change there. The third thing is doing direct interviews with supervisors around observed behavior changes. So if you had participants in this program, tell us a little bit about how they're showing up now. Are you seeing a change in attitude or behavior or skill on these areas that we can more directly tie to the content in the curriculum? So kind of a long answer, but there's three, what I believe to be kind of three essential components. You can't just pick one. There's layers to it because it is challenging at times to draw that, to understand how any training, whether it's leadership or any other kind of training that you might go to, actually impacts the bottom line of the business. And so we need to kind of layer these different pieces to it.
Wow.
It was a lot. You're like,
Well,
okay,
yeah, wow,
negative.
yeah, that, yeah, wow, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna now into the challenges. Like, what are the biggest challenges that organizations face when they're trying to implement effective leadership development programs?
Well, the first is just general kind of, as much as we talk about culture can get in the way of new learning because the behaviors are so embedded and
Resistance.
There's
Yeah.
just resistance. And it's not just the people in the program, but it's their supervisors and it's their staff. It's like the whole thing. And so I'm working on developing a leadership program right now for an organization where we've targeted, one layer.
Right.
One tier, like everybody in this role is going to get this training. But what's important is that everybody senior to them in the organization understands what we're teaching, what the expectations are for the behavior change, things that we want to be different on the back end, and how they can support their person. Because if your boss, if you go to all this training and leave with these ideas and this energy, and now we're going to do this and and your boss is like, we're not doing that. You don't have time for that.
Yeah,
That's not a priority. So
exactly. That's
the
not a
entire
priority. Oh gosh,
yeah, we
yeah.
need the whole senior leadership team on board so that they can further encourage that behavior change. And to be honest, there's problems at the top. They're not all perfect leaders. And so their own, whether they're reluctant to take feedback and kind of do the introspection like you advocate for, there are other issues. And so trying to get them to really understand the curriculum and try to be supportive, we're hoping will also, just further embed the behavior change that we want to see as a result of the program.
Yeah, I always, I mean, that's also an issue because we wanna, for example, implement, it's not even just a leadership program, maybe just a project. I think what you're saying here is getting the buy-in from the stakeholders,
Yeah.
in this case, the bosses, right? So
Yeah.
if let's say I don't know if this is part of your program and that's why people come to you for this, but what are your I don't know, what do you do to get the buy-in of these bosses? Like, what are the steps? Maybe not the steps, like I don't know. I don't want to say secrets, but what do you normally put out there so that okay, it'll start to open up their minds and they say, okay, maybe what Robin is saying, this is actually going to be good for the long run.
Yeah. Well, one thing I found is that when you first talk to senior leaders about doing any kind of leadership development, they're all in. Yes, yep, it's important. We need it. And by the way, you need to tell these people that they need to be better at taking feedback because like that's like the initial idea isn't necessarily the hard sell. And they'll tell you that they are bought in.
Mm.
The check on that comes in, are they really going to make the investment, which is, are they really going to actually follow through and pay for it? Are they really going to make the time available for their person? And when it comes down to like really living into those behavior changes, are they going to lead by example? That's where you start to notice that their buy-in isn't as strong as they initially, it didn't match what they were saying. So the hard truth of this is it's messy, long, tedious work at times.
Arduous work.
It's arduous. And not always, not always, but I think the expectation that you're going to do any kind of training or any kind of leadership development and things are going to like switch overnight, it just doesn't work. It just, in my experience, hasn't worked that way. But if we have a vision that we're working towards, and we just beat that drum every single, like, this is the kind of behavior change we want. This is the kind of, how we want people to show up, and just keep beating that drum, not beating people, but beating the drum. That over time you start to see shifts in the organization. So I think it's just when you're building buy-in, you can say all the words. It's just be aware that what people tell you may be different from your actual experience, because they feel like intellectually they want to buy in, but it can be very difficult for them to change their own behavior.
Again, beautiful. I thought of something. So that means, Robin, in your line of work, you've got to be really patient. And I mean, when I read your profile, I think you used to be an overachiever. So I mean, how do you manage it? How do you, like, from becoming bossy to having to stand on the other side of the party and say, I want this to be done in the next 3 months, but it seems like this is going to be dragged to a year or maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
How do you keep that composure?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wish I had the answer. Some days are certainly easier than others, but I'll answer on my best day is when I really believe in my heart that people want to do a good job. Like, I really believe that. I didn't used to believe that. I thought people were just, screwing up at work just to piss me off. But I've.
Oh yeah, that's very good. Yeah, that's very good. That's a mindset. Like, always assume good intent. Like,
yes. Yes, that's exactly it. You just put it perfectly. So on my best day, I remember to assume good intent. And that's where that will breed a little bit more patience, and like, okay, I see little glimmers of them trying, or maybe they're missing this piece of the puzzle. Let me plug that in. So that's on my best day. But I'll be honest, like, it can be incredibly frustrating, especially when you see people lower in the organization suffering because they're either working for someone that doesn't support them or doesn't understand them, that's not taking the time. In the very worst case scenario, like somebody that might be putting them down or trying to keep them in a box. So that can be very difficult to, watch any group that's not fulfilling their potential because someone higher up in the organization is, because of their own limitations. So that's very difficult. And sometimes, I mean, we can just keep working through that, keep beating that drum. But at times then, I want to work, some of my coaching clients is like, it's probably time to move on. Like, if you're not going to make progress with this particular person, take your skills and your strengths and go apply them in a place that's really going to appreciate you.
That's beautiful. I mean, we're saying, I think this, but again, we're not sugarcoating, but we just want the best for this person, right?
Right.
Beautiful. Oh yeah. How do you measure the success, and how do you keep up with the latest trends and developments in the field of leadership development, and what resources do you rely on?
Yeah. Well, I love this. So part of it is having conversations with people like you. So I
Oh,
love talk. I just love hearing from because everybody has so much experience and perspective. You can learn something from everyone. So it's kind of going into every single conversation, whether it's at work or, at the bus stop or whatever, with this ear for listening to the kind of challenges people are having, what's working for them, what's not working for them. So just kind of being really open and listening to that. On a day-to-day basis, I listen to a ton of podcasts. So I'm an avid consumer. I like want to listen to all of them. I listen to them like on two x speed so I can get more of them in. There are books that I also mostly listen to. I have a stack on my nightstand now, but read a page or two and then I fall asleep. So like reading an actual book, I like doing it, but I tend to fall asleep. So I would say podcasts, just reading books. I think the book summaries that are put out are really useful because you kind of get the main idea and kind of think about how it applies. But I think the most important thing is it can be easy to be a consumer of information and ideas.
mm,
So when we are in consumption mode, like we're reading, listening to a lot of things, and it can feel good in the moment to hear it, but then it's not as like the value comes in when you actually figure out like, okay, what do I do with this? So reminding myself to take a little time after each conversation to like, okay, like how might I
like,
put this in
yeah,
practice? So I
yeah.
can see you're like, yes, yes, you're that resonates with you.
Implementing it like, oh my God, I have this whole a tsunami of information, but wait, how do I start? How do I begin improving my life in this area? So okay, then is the time to take a step back and okay, maybe guess A spoke about this. If again, yeah, I love it. Yeah. Sorry, you Robin, you were saying.
No, no, you got it. I mean, so I think it's like information can come from all different kinds of sources, but don't forget to also take a little bit of time after you've consumed something to figure out how you might apply it. You'll just get so much more out of it.
Yeah. Reflection.
Yes, reflection and action.
And action, reflection and action. Yeah, that's true. So, okay, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting their leadership development journey?
Oh, well, I think it's to think about it in a multi-pronged way, that you're not going to get all that you need from any single source. So you'll get some classroom training, you'll get a lot of on-the-job training because you'll be in it. You'll have a mentor and you'll probably have a boss that's giving you some feedback. You'll have podcasts, you'll have books. So really thinking about how you can put together puzzle pieces that are all going to contribute. I'm also a huge fan of coaching. So the earlier you can engage with a leadership development coach, that is somebody that is going to be really get to know you, to understand your challenges, and really help you see those blind spots that you want to overcome in your journey. So I think about it in a multi-pronged way, not just like I'm just going to get it from here. And to the extent that you can engage with a coach, it just helps kind of pull it all together.
Uh, in your opinion, what are the most important skills and qualities that leaders should focus on developing in today's fast-paced business environment?
Hmm. I think, let's see. I think I might have written about this, so I may say an answer that's different from what I put out there before
Well,
because
that's okay.
it kind of
Yeah.
changes on a day-to-day basis. I really think this ability to tune into others. So maybe it's empathy or you know, I don't know. So maybe I would say something like empathy, which is just drop all of the stuff and just really get to know somebody, understand where they are, what they want, and approach it like a team. Like, let's get together and figure this out. Like, I think all of this, there's like so much stuff at work that goes on between us in terms of just things that go unsaid and missed expectations and all that. Like, let's just drop that and just, what do you need or want from this experience? How can I help you? I think is incredibly powerful. And, and kind of letting go of this idea that there should be some kind of enduring loyalty. Like, I just want to like help you be
Mm.
successful in your life because I'd like this relationship to continue on forever, regardless of whether we work together. So, yeah, so I guess maybe it's something along the lines of empathy. I also believe very strongly just in communication because it's amazing to me. Just, when so I work with people at all levels in an organization, but almost every single time I go into a room of senior people, their ability to communicate is much stronger than working with another cadre of people lower in the organization. So what becomes clear is that it's not always the best idea that wins. It's not the hardest worker that wins. It's the person that can clearly articulate an idea, get people on board, describe what the impact was, and then move on to the next thing. Like that, those communication skills, written, verbal, all of it, are so important. So I would say maybe empathy in terms of the relationship building and then communication just in terms of like getting stuff done. I mean, it's just critical.
Oh, wow. Wow. Building that much. I will sit and ponder after our interview and
Okay.
how can I apply that in my daily job?
Okay.
Okay, so four more questions. This is gonna pivot into my podcast type of question. So,
Okay.
what is your heart's greatest wish, Robin?
Oh, the first thing that came up for me was about my children, just being able to see my children through to adulthood and see them thrive. I just take so much joy and, pride in them. Um, but maybe a little bit bigger than that, it's just to have enough time to like see and do all of the things. Like there's so much, um, richness and just interesting things in this world to like learn and experience. Selfishly, I just want enough time to do all of it. So that's very selfish. I should probably say something more like
Oh,
help others or something,
no,
but
no, that is your heart's greatest wish. That is yours.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Do you have a mantra that you live by?
Do the work. And so yeah, so it's do the work. I believe
I, I,
that,
I felt that. I felt
yeah,
that. It's just three words, but it's
yeah,
like just
do the work.
do the work. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
do the work. Hmm. Okay. So, what gets you up in the morning?
The smell of coffee. I'm I, I wake up early. I always have. I love, I'm just excited for the day. I usually try to have a pretty clear idea of what I'm going to do the next day before I go to sleep. So, I already kind of like, I'm not in the morning trying to figure that out, but I have this cherished morning ritual that
Ooh.
is, I get up, I feed my dogs, I get my coffee, and then I sit down on my computer and I have usually about 30 to 45 minutes of just journaling, a little meditation or a little reflection, and just drinking my coffee by myself with it quiet before the kids get up. I'm like, oh, I love that. And
Yes.
on the on the rare occasion that one of the kids like gets up early because they're like sick or they need something, I'm like, ah. Yeah.
I need my me time.
I feel grounded. So yeah, and then from there, get the kids down, I go for my workout and then start the workday. So
Okay. So, Robin, if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
you got this. You got this. Yeah, I find myself saying it so often to my coaching clients and to other people that, you know, I so believe in our capacity to do amazing things. And sometimes I see people going to bring this full circle, that self doubt or kind of letting things get in your way or be hurdles and slow you down, like it's it's not necessary. You got this. Nicolette, you got this.
Oh, thank you, Robin. I got this.
You got this. So yeah, it it's not original. It's not an original quote, but it's something I believe like so passionately about. And so that's all I want to do. It, like, you know, really with the people that I'm interacting with is just convey that I believe in you. You got this.
I believe in myself. We
Yeah.
got this. Oh, wow. Okay. I think that wraps up our interview today. Oh my God, Robin, I really, really enjoyed this time.
Me too.
I
Me
think
too.
you're such an entertaining guest, and I think your expertise is something that people should really how do I say this, get to know. And I hope through this podcast people can actually see the importance, not just because they want to be somebody. Like you said, we can all be leaders in our own right. Like you can be an AC technician, and you can be a leader in that, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, you could be, I don't know, a janitor, and then you just get up in the morning and just do your own thing, and you're proud of it
Yeah.
because you're wearing, yeah, you're wearing that. This is what I do. I love it.
Right.
So I think the work that you're doing is wonderful, Robin. And thank you so much for sharing your voice and your story.
Oh, I so appreciate the time with you, Nicolette. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right.
So I followed you on Instagram. So when this episode aired, I will tag you so you can also
Wonderful.
share it in your
I
profile.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. All
Thank
right.
you, Robin. You have a
Have a
good
good
day.
day. Okay.
You
Bye.
too.